hyperspeed performance even at peak traffic. That's a bold claim. How do you manage to fulfill it where others very often fail?
We looked at the problem differently. Hosting, really, it's running a web server. It's allowing customers to connect to it, allowing customers to connect multiple times.
But what was the reason why you invested so much in security? And rather, let's call it unorthodox way if we compare it to others.
As far as we're concerned, security shouldn't be an afterthought. And sadly it is. But every one of those sites, I can tell you right now, will be attacked. There will be an attack on your site. There are so many bots, so many worms, so many tools out there scanning the internet hourly looking for WordPress sites.
Hello everyone, welcome. Today we are going to talk about hosting companies and about all the promises they make, because in most cases, hosting companies do promise a lot. In a lot of cases, not only they promise a lot, they end it with only for $5 a month. What can go wrong, right? That's why today I have Wes Tatters from Rapyd.Cloud. He's a managing director there and also a part of WordPress hosting. Did I forget something?
That's enough for a start.
Okay. And we are going to talk a bit about a lot of aspects of hosting. And I think we will start with those promises. For example, if you go to Rapyd.Cloud website, you will see that this nice motto at the top, hyperspeed performance even at peak traffic. That's a bold claim.
It is.
And I can tell that similar things are promised on other websites, but how do you manage to fulfill it where others very often fail?
We looked at the problem differently. Hosting, really, it's running a web server. It's allowing customers to connect to it, running PHP, allowing customers to connect multiple times. And there are many ways to achieve that. We've been building web servers for the better part of 20 years now. The challenge is, though, that to stay up with technology, to remain concurrent, you have to build an agile hosting infrastructure. In reality, most of our hosting infrastructures that we see currently are quite monolithic, and there's quite a lot of legacy involved in them. They're data centers that might have been built 10 years ago, and they're still running. They're still got the same box in there that was running 10 years ago, and it's got the same 1,000 sites on it or the same 100 sites on it. The logistics, the challenges as a hosting company of grading all of those customers, ironically, tends to be prohibitive. So in a world where we live with what's called race to the bottom, how much cheaper can I get my hosting than your hosting? The things that go firstly are upgrading technology. You can't be just trying to get the cheapest hosting for someone and be upgrading your technology every day. So we looked at the problem differently. Our specific customers and customers that Rapyd are targeting are customers that want the highest performance. And they want the highest performance when a customer is logged in. And this is a challenge. See, in the traditional space, the way we accelerate things or maybe make things faster is to cache everything. So we'll cache in cloud, we'll use Cloudflare APO, we'll cache every page theoretically possible, or we'll use Varnish or Breeze, or we'll use Nginx, fast CGI page caching. All of these things are great until you need to deliver each individual customer their own customer experience. And that's the challenge that we had to address. We come out of the BuddyBoss world. BuddyBoss is a plugin and theme for WordPress. One of the most difficult, without a doubt, WordPress hosts or plugins. So we come out of the WordPress space. We come out of the BuddyBoss space. BuddyBoss is a theme and plugin for WordPress that effectively allows a WordPress site to be turned into
a social media platform, your own effectively private version of Facebook. It has activity feeds, it has user groups, has
profile pages, has all those things that you would see if you're on a Facebook site. The challenge is, though, that Facebook runs a couple of $1 billion worth of infrastructure to ensure that all that works. In the WordPress space, no one's got that sort of money. And your $5 shared hosting from a traditional hosting isn't going to be able to achieve those loads. Because what it's not able to do is deliver a completely fresh page with completely unique information on every page request. It's an activity feed. Between the last time you looked at it and the time you're looking at it now, and that might only be a couple of seconds, 10 people might have made a new post. 20 people might have made comments. Someone might have messaged you with a live message. You might have had messages or notifications into a group or some other chat that you're following. So it becomes a very dynamic space. So we had to look at hosting, not from how you trick the world by caching at the edge or caching in the cloud or page caching. We had to work out ways to go, how do we build brand new pages for every individual customer in real time? And the way you achieve that is by deploying the highest, most powerful processing resources that are currently available and do it at scale. We currently partner with AWS. AWS have a very unique product at the high end of their infrastructure that can scale to 192 CPU cores, can scale to half or 3/4 of a terabyte of RAM, but most importantly, it can do that with true CPU cores running at unclocked clock rates, which means that we can get as much performance as we can out of every one of those CPU cores, get as much performance as we can out of all those platforms. And by doing that, Rapyd's made a name for itself as being highly performant because it's using the latest technology. And we've also made commitments to our customers. As new technology comes available, and there's some brand new technology from AMD, their Zen 5 processors and rumors of a new Zen 6 processor coming very soon. We will be looking as those become commercially viable to deliver that to all of our customers. Our orchestration platform and our structure allows us to do things that in the traditional space are much more difficult. We can redeploy an entire user base of customers to a new data center without the customer even knowing it's happened. They just wake up one morning and they're on the newest server or they're on the newest infrastructure in their region. It's because of the architecture that we built. And that's a challenge for a lot of the other hosts. Architecture isn't such that they can just redeploy. There's logistics and complexities around how they redeploy their platforms and obviously costs,
which can itself be prohibitive.
Yeah, that's true. The thing that you mentioned about being agile in your case and in a lot of cases being not agile. And that's when we see those websites that are running on very outdated PHP versions because it was all connected with some long-term contract and the hosting isn't doing too much effort to upgrade because the contract is running. So why change anything if it's running?
And that's the thing. It is a bit of the why change everything. And unless the customers are really complaining about things like performance, and look, let's be honest, if you're paying $5 for your hosting, you don't have a lot of space to complain about your performance. We're honest, our hosting's not $5. Our hosting is priced accordingly to the sort of data centers and the sort of performance that we offer on our platforms. But performance is only one part of that. It's about getting the entire stack right. And that comes down to things like how you manage your stack, how you make sure that you're on the latest versions of Linux kernels, on the latest versions of the Linux platforms. I've seen hosts that are still running CentOS in their data centers because, hey, it's been a great Linux platform for many years, but it's end of life. It's no longer being updated. There's no longer any security patches for it, but it's still there because it's great and people treat that. We run Elm Linux 9.3 and we're about to transition to Elm Linux 9.5 in our platform. But again, that's because our orchestration and our infrastructure allows us to actually even update a customer's Linux kernel without serious... Look, if we're at updates the Linux kernel, we've got to reboot. We accept that we've got to reboot to do that. But the customer's downtime is the downtime of a reboot. might be a couple of minutes. It's not days. It's not days of retooling or re-architecting. So it's very much about thinking differently about hosting.
And you mentioned that you come from BuddyBoss platform. And as I understand, this is the reason why Rapyd.Cloud started, right? To solve the problem.
BuddyBoss, 15 years in the WordPress space, 35,000 customers, and they all hit a point where they become successful. And it's the point where they become successful. And this isn't just BuddyBoss. It's not unique. This is the same for LearnDash, Tutor LMS, same for WooCommerce sites. There's a point where they become successful where traditional hosting can't keep up. And it's largely to do with concurrency. It's largely to do with simultaneous users. Now, of course, if you're on a WooCommerce site and you've got 50 concurrent users, you're actually pretty excited because, hey, that means you potentially got 50 people through your checkout. That's a good day. If you're running a LearnDash site, for example, and you've sold a cohort of new people to start on your $100 LearnDash course, they might all log on at the same time on Monday morning to start their new cohort. And all of a sudden, you've got 100 people on your server in real time, and they could potentially be there for 8 hours. It's not like a LearnDash. It's not like a WooCommerce transaction where you want to get them into your site, get them through the checkout, down the funnel, and get their money and kick them out the door. These people are there for a long time. Same thing with BuddyBoss.
It's a social media platform. It's an activity feed. It's groups and forums. You don't want them leaving. You want them there all the time. You want them interacting. You want them
communicating with each other. So you wind up with scenarios where you've got real-time customers many hours a day. And that concurrency is where the problems start to occur. And success isn't a big number. It's not millions. Success for a BuddyBoss site could be 500 users. If those 500 users all happen to log on every night at 7 p.m., and we have BuddyBoss sites that do,
that 500 users of concurrency becomes a very big hosting problem.
And the hosts don't want to know about it. The hosts don't want to be involved in it because it's putting massive amounts of load on their CPU resources, on their memory resources, their network bandwidth, and all those other resources. So what happens is you just keep pushing the price up. And so the price of the customer keeps going up and up. But ironically, when these sites become successful, money isn't always an issue. See, I've seen BuddyBoss sites have 6-figure and 7-figure businesses. I've seen BuddyBoss and LearnDash sites that do $150,000 worth of sales a month on one course. So the money itself isn't the problem. And in many cases, these customers are willing to spend money. But what they sadly find is that they can be spending money and actually not getting any real return on their investment. So we've just doubled the amount we're paying, but our site's still the same speed. And in some cases, we spent more money and it's now going slower.
And the truth is that this is one of the very common solutions we can learn, that we see our website is slowing down. We ask our host, okay, we have a problem. What should I do? And instead of trying to find the root cause, it's more about, you should just upgrade. And your problems should be solved.
See, the challenge is that the problem that they're trying to solve is concurrency. And the only way to solve concurrency is more CPU cores and more memory. Now, there are different ways of doing that. You can do it by scaling vertically. You can do it by trying to scale horizontally. You can do it by all sorts of different data structures. But many of them actually cause as many problems in a complicated WordPress site as just not doing anything. I've seen people that have said, we were spending $2,000, we've spent $4,000 now, and our sites run slower for some reason. And you then look at, because what they did was they changed the architecture to try and fix a problem, or they decided, we're going to horizontally scale, we're going to build a cluster. And what they forgot to model in that cluster was, so a BuddyBoss site does 2,000 SQL page data requests per page load. And all of a sudden, that cluster where we went, let's move the database over into its own server, now adds latency between the two, and you've got 2 milliseconds latency between each one, and all of a sudden you've got a site that's 2 seconds slower than it was before we tried to fix it. So you've got to think outside the box. You've got to think about what the problem is you're trying to solve. And that's where Rapyd came into being. We spent a lot of time, we've worked with a lot of hosts inside BuddyBoss. Know most of the hosting companies. A lot of them had a really good go at trying to work out how best to host Rapyd, how best to host BuddyBoss. We know the same thing from Lifter, from Tutor LMS, from the LearnDash teams. They all have products. Some of them even have their own hosting products, but their own hosting products also face the same challenges when those sites get successful. When they start to scale, they start to struggle. So Rapyd had to come at it from a very different angle and say, how do we scale WordPress sites in a way that's cost effective and in a way that doesn't penalize the customer? One of the challenges of scaling is that the traditional way you scale is you charge the customer per month for the biggest box they need for the biggest hour of day of the month. And then for the rest of the month, their site might be doing nothing, but they're actually paying an extra. And that's where that $4,000 or $2,000 or whatever it is a month price starts to come in. So they get boxed in. And of course, once you've done something, you hope it works. Does it always work? Things crash, things fail. So Rapyd was built to solve a problem, to solve this problem of high concurrency in complex WordPress sites. And there are some crazy complex WordPress sites out there. We've seen sites with 250 plugins installed. Yeah, and even I go, seriously? Let's sit with your dev team and work out which of those 250 plugins you don't really need. But see, that in itself has huge implications. And part of the reason we're talking today is security. For every plugin you add, for every extra bit of line of code you add, you increase your vector vulnerabilities for malware. For every plugin that's not updated, I've seen customers running plugins that, we can't update that plugin because if we do, our site crashes. That's a problem if that plugin's got a vulnerability in it. Or we can't update to PHP 8.0 because we've got a plugin that we had custom built by a developer 5 years ago, and we can't find him. We don't know where he is, and he's the only person that understands the source code, but we can't update. So they're sitting running software which is potentially vulnerable, potentially exposed on a PHP version, which we know is software compromised, potentially on a Linux stack, which we also know is potentially vulnerable and compromised because it's got a version of OpenSSL from 1.0, which we all know is malware vulnerabilized, and every hacker in the world knows is out there. So we get all these crazy combinations of things, and all of them create vectors and risks. So in addition to thinking about performance, and in addition to thinking about those things, we have also had to look at how we deal with other issues, like plugin loads, and specifically related to security. Probably after BuddyBoss, traditionally the next heaviest plugin you install on your platform is probably a malware program. Probably a malware
Or a
program.
multi-language. Or the multi-language.
Oh, multi-language. We won't even go there. That's just something. So something that no one should ever run, but obviously we understand that it's important. But big, heavy, complicated malware products that do a good job, but they're running inside WordPress. They're running in your PHP stack. Probably the worst place to put a fence is inside the gate, and they all add load and performance. And I've had customers go, I can't install that malware plugin because it makes my site run slow. And there's a reason, because of the amount of work it's doing and the amount of problems we have. So we went and we started looking at how we help customers work with that. And we started at the bottom end by saying, let's get rid of the malware out of WordPress. Let's move it out of the stack entirely, put it in the server. We can put it in the server where it's not running PHP, firstly. So it's not running a slow interpreted programming language that's 15 years old. It's running modern source code, running at the kernel level. So we get performance advantages, and we get a bunch of advantages in terms of also protection as well. But you've got to think holistically from the top to the bottom.
But what was the reason why you invested so much in security, and rather, let's call it unorthodox way if we compare it to others? Because you already started saying
Why? Because
moving up
as far as we're concerned, security shouldn't be an afterthought. And sadly it is.
Or it's just a task. It's just a task
Or-
that I will do once and that's it.
Apparently I've got to install something, and someone told me I've got to download insert name of malware plugin here. And I need the free one because I can't afford to actually buy one. Anyway, it's an entirely separate conversation. But every one of those sites, I can tell you right now, will be attacked. there will be an attack on your site. There are so many bots, so many worms, so many tools out there scanning the internet hourly looking for WordPress sites. And why wouldn't they? 43% of the world's website base is running. What's that? 895 million websites? Even if it's half of that, it doesn't really matter. That's still a whole lot of honeypots for malware vectors and malware attackers to get into. Because what are they looking for? They're just looking for your user information. They're looking for your email addresses, or they're looking for a source that they can add to their coin mining network, or they're looking at a tool for an attack bot, so they're out there continually looking. So security just cannot be, in 2025, an afterthought. It can't be something you think about doing. I've built my site now, I suppose I've got to put some security on it. It's got to be there from the day you install WordPress. Because, see, some of this malware that's out there is really good. And
Oh, it is.
it might have snuck in while you were developing your site. And it might be sitting there for 6 months, quietly hiding where no one can find it. It might be buried in a database record, or it might be hashed and decoded. And these days, there isn't a signature out there that knows it exists. Of course, it might have been written by an AI tool. We'll talk about that later, I'm sure. But it might have been written. So it's just sitting there dormant. And it might have arrived day one when you were doing your development, or you might have installed a plugin while you're in development. There used to be a plugin called AdMiner, which is basically a tool to let a developer access the MariaDB or MySQL database while they were in the browser. Full of vulnerabilities, full of malware issues. Was installed for a long time, almost by default by most developers. I just install AdMiner and let me just update and check the database. And they might A, forget to deinstall it, or it might already be attacked while it was either it was on the development server and the vector was already exposed. They've probably deleted it, they've probably removed it, but often in many cases the damage has already been done. So for us, it's too late almost, in our opinion, to install a malware tool after you put your site live. So for Rapyd, the malware tool, which we use, Monarchs, is installed before you get WordPress even up and running.
But I know that your security stack is something more than Monarchs.
Not just
Monarchs is for malware.
Monarchs is for malware,
Yeah,
but it's layers. We build layers of tools.
Yeah.
So we start with Monarchs. We start with it in our kernel. We then add a Komodo firewall inside the WordPress stack. We then build an edge tool, which we place in the cloud. And once we've done all those things, we're at a start. Then we need to add Patchstack. And we put that on top. So it's the front layer of our WordPress stack. The reason why that is that even when we cover all the malware, all those vulnerabilities, there's probably no one out there but you guys who know about the plugin that hasn't been updated yet, or the new vulnerability that's just been dropped that hasn't been even published yet. And by having this extremely diverse and dense stack, we're giving everyone the best chance to ensure that they're never attacked. They're never going to wake up one morning and discover that their website is no longer theirs, or is now porting to a online gambling casino in Central Europe, or is now running and spamming out millions of emails on an email spam campaign, and their email provider sending them a bill the week after. We're protecting against all those things, so it's important to be very holistic.
And Patchstack's a unique part of that solution. Because, see, we can stop the vulnerabilities. We can stop the malware attacks. What we can't handle is the plugins that haven't been updated yet. And there's lots of reasons why plugins aren't updated. One of the best well-known scenarios, I think, in the last couple of years was Elementor.
It's 30% of the WordPress builder place. Really great plugin. We use it on a lot of our sites. Probably 2/3 of our sites use Elementor. Unfortunately, a vulnerability was discovered in a particular component of Elementor Pro in combination with a particular component of WooCommerce. It's a perfect storm. You had to have all of these pieces in place. But if they were all in place, someone who knew about the vulnerability could take administrative control of your site in about half a minute. It literally was all it took. In fact, you could do it. You didn't need any special hacking tools. You could literally do it with a couple of lines in the query line of your browser, and you could take control of a site. Now, it wasn't malware. It didn't have a signature of, oh, there's a malicious file that's been uploaded into your system. It was a plugin that had a bug in it. The Elementor team addressed it really quickly. The moment it was discovered, they worked, they got the patch up, they had it available and ready to go. But unfortunately, see, Elementor is an incredibly complicated plugin. When you add Elementor Pro and the 35,000 other plugins add-ons that people add to it, people rarely update it without being incredibly careful. The reason why? There's a statistical chance every time you update it that something on your site will break. The layout might change, the look might change. So the standard workflow for a big complicated plugin like Elementor, same for BuddyBoss, same for LearnDash, same for Tutor LMS, is that you plan a time, you create a staging site, you take a copy, you perform the updates, you then do regression testing, whether it's visually yourself or with regression testing tools, you make sure that everything's working, and then you repeat that on the live site a day later. Now, the problem is that for a lot of people, their WordPress site's their side gig. So Elementor announced there was a security update plugin, and everyone went, oh, good. I must do that on the weekend. Of course, that's when they get to work on their side gig. Unfortunately, Friday morning, the vulnerability hit. It went through all of the well-known malware tools. Of course, it wasn't a malware signature. It wasn't a vulnerability. It was just a couple of standard-looking requests that magically at the end of it let you go upload, add a new user with administrative privileges. I've got administrative privileges. Now I'm not malware. I'm the owner. It's totally fine for me to start changing things. So nothing in that whole workflow was going to protect those customers, except for people that had Patchstack installed. Because even though they had not updated their plugin yet, Patchstack's virtual patching system was blocking the vulnerability. It was preventing the external attackers that were using this vector that they discovered from taking over the site. The customer's plugin hadn't been updated yet. Patchstack's virtual stack technology protected. And that's why we build such a deep security stack. Because see, again, remember I said my customers are successful. My customers are often customers who've gone past it just being their side gig, and they're earning real money. A, for their data to be lost. B, for their site to be taken offline, or for their customers to be disadvantaged in any way. And so it's vitally important that we do those things for them. So again, as I said early on, Rapyd's about solving problems. And what we want to try and do all the time is solve problems customers don't know they have yet, and solve those problems in ways that they're already dealt with. Okay? And it will happen again, I can tell you now. The next attack that has a plugin that's got a vector open, Elementor's not the only one. We had the blocks attack. We've had malware programs with vulnerabilities in them, you name it. It's going to keep happening. But for us, a deep stack means that our customers can be much more confident that they can get on with the business of doing what they do, which is running their online course or running their social or running their shop, and not be concerned about, if I installed the latest plugin update, or if I installed the latest, do I need to upgrade my security plugin, or do I need to do this, or what do I need to do? We take those problems away from them. We take them out of their space.
You know what? The thing that I really like about what you said, and this is also something we at Patchstack very often try to learn our customers, is about the importance of this layered security. That, let's be honest, you can't be this all-in-one solution because you can't sit at all the layers at the same
It's too
time.
hard.
It's even impossible from the technical point of view because you either are, as we part of the, I mean, we are a plugin. We sit in WordPress. But thanks to this, we have access to some context that
Yes.
firewalls that will sit on different layers. But having this full layer coverage is the priority when it comes to handling security. And we also have to remember also about the things that are directly connected with the technological stack, because very often we also have to think about this general hygiene,
Yeah.
the things that users have to take care of.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, sometimes they also fail here.
It's the
But
only area that we are yet to address fully, and it's something that we continue looking at, is how to address what I would call the central layer of WordPress. We still can't solve the problem 100% ourselves of a customer that has a password called 123, because that's another plugin potentially, or another layer of plugins. We can't easily address things like stolen session keys. We can't easily address things like that currently. But it's something, again, we're investigating as well, and probably in the future, I'd say probably definitely in the future, it's another area that we'll be investigating. There are some really nice tools out there in the WordPress space that attempt already to address those problems. Some quite successfully, others not. But again, I think you've got to, from a hosting perspective, look at all the ways that you can take these problems out of the customer's space, make it something that they don't have to think about, or in our space, don't give them options. We've got customers that Patchstack's installed automatically with our WordPress site. If they uninstall it, we reinstall it. If they try to disable it, we re-enable it. If there is a specific reason why a customer has an issue, and occasionally there might be a specific plugin combination that is being blocked by Patchstack's engine or its security engine, and we might have to go in and work with them to lower or whitelist something. We'll work with them on that. But we actually prefer them not to be able to touch those things. Our support team know all about it. Our support team will work with our customers any time of day, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, if they have an issue. But it makes sense for us. The same with Monarchs. The same with our WAF at the other end at the cloud. They're all locked down. The customer can't control them. They're on. If a customer has a problem, and occasionally there will be, they work with our support team, and our support team will manage. That way, look, this is the concept of managed WordPress. If we can control the entire stack, we know what's going on everywhere. It's when you have customers coming in and trying to fiddle the stack and going, oh, but you said your site has Patchstack running. Yeah, you turned it off. Oh, well, no, we didn't. Yeah, here's the log. See, deactivated Patchstack. Here's our log that said re-enabled it, but that's a separate conversation. But yeah, there are things like this in the security space and in other spaces in the WordPress stack as well, where you have to try and control the quality. And I think partly security is such a challenging area. No one can know it all. And
There are people out there being paid lots of money in real terms daily in foreign countries, in black companies, in some just script kiddies in their basement
that are spending their lives trying to work out how to break into your server. For some, it's just a game. Oh, I found the hole and I snuck in and told them about it. For others, it's for malicious reasons. And for others, it's for commercial reasons. And because there's money involved, means that the attack vectors are just continuing to grow all the time. And then we add AI on top of it, and good luck. I was talking with the team at Monarchs recently about the number of new malware. So Monarchs is a little bit different to Patchstack. Obviously, it's a malware tool, not a virtual patching tool. But it's also not a traditional malware tool. Traditional malware tools are primarily signature scanners. So They create hashed signatures of a bunch of rules, and then every file that's opened or loaded or transferred is compared against that rule set to see if there is a matching signature. And if there is, then it's then adjudged to be suspicious or vulnerable. Where tools like Monarchs go past this is into the space called the RAS space, which is tools that don't just watch the files, don't just look for signatures. They actually look at what's happening. So they look and go, should a WordPress file be attempting to write into that temporary folder with what suspiciously looks like obfuscated PHP code, or obfuscated Perl code, or obfuscated Bash script, and immediately starts flagging those as suspicious. If you think of it, they're basically a giant global honeypot. If they start seeing a uptick in that exact same thing, they now know about a potential vulnerability long before it's ever become a CVS actual vector attack, but someone's already discovered it. And so what they're seeing is it's starting to happen. And we were talking about the uptick in that. 5 or 10 years ago, we'd get an announcement of a new malware virus once a week. And it might be on the cover of a magazine or something you read. We're being told that there's up to 20,000 new virus or malware attack vectors appearing every couple of months. And that's going to grow. It's going to be hundreds of thousands, and then it's going to grow and grow. We have to keep ahead of it.
And this is the thing that I would like to talk now. It's the thing that most people use right now for creating cool images, or sometimes writing some simple code.
And sometimes not simple code.
Oh yeah, I know. I'm just trying to build one thing with Cloud. It's amazing. It can help a lot.
Fantastic.
If you know what you are doing.
Fantastic.
If you know what you are doing. On the other hand, right now I see two dark sides of it. There are probably more, but in terms of what we're talking, so security, and let's address them separately. First, there already are a lot of people who will submit a plugin to the WordPress repository that was 100% AI generated, maybe apart from the header when the user added.
Maybe not 100%. They might have. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
But
It doesn't
the code
matter.
itself was totally AI generated, but the biggest problem will lie in the fact that the person who generated it doesn't have a clue
Exactly
what is happening in.
Yeah.
And do you think this will be a mass problem in the upcoming years?
Look, I was talking to one of the plugin development team a couple of weeks ago, and he actually did a presentation at CloudFest. He was on stage. They were talking about this exact problem. He was basically saying that the plugin assessment team, when you submit a plugin, they have a bunch of scripts and a bunch of tools and tasks that evaluate that plugin before it's approved for release. One of the comments was, so you think there's these plugins that are arriving that are AI generated? His comment was yes. And it was, how do you know? It was like, of course they got comments. Really well-written comments. Developers knocking out plugins don't write really well-written comments. But that was just a side joke. The concern was that they had vulnerabilities in there. The concern was that this plugin, this AI-generated plugin, had vulnerabilities that could be exploited by an attacker. And they were in the plugin at the point when they were submitted. Two issues. Firstly, that there was a vulnerability that could be exploited. But the second one, as you already alluded to, there was a pretty good chance, 99.9999% chance, that the person who submitted the code didn't know the vulnerability was there. Which means it could be a well-meaning local developer. Worst case scenario, local developer, someone comes to him and says, hey, I need a plugin that does this. He knocks that plugin up for them, hands it to them. They don't have to put it through the repository because it's a plugin just for that one site or that group of companies. And that plugin's been released. It's got a vulnerability in it. It's going to be discovered at some time.
And this is the moment when when personally I see really how patching will be important,
Of course it will, hugely so.
very important.
At the point
Because
where you discover there's a problem. But that's
yeah,
still the challenge. It's still discovering there's a problem. Because, see, the flip side of that, and it's the second part of the AI problem, is that if AI can write a plugin that's got vulnerabilities in it, AI can find plugin vulnerabilities in much the same way. See, the entire WordPress repository is available for download,
it is.
which means I can download the source code. Even those commercially closed plugins where you've got to buy it, the source code's all there. So I can pour that source code, the lot of it, through a AI tool that's been taught to look for vulnerabilities. And then ask that same AI tool to start writing me vector and malware attacks. And again, it doesn't need to be someone with a PhD in cybersecurity. It could be someone in their basement that could be churning out malware attacks just based on all that free source code that's being given out and the discoveries of it. So this is I guess the global danger. Patchstack has got a full-time job keeping up. Monarch's sitting underneath it. It's got a full-time job catching them. We have had, well, I'll be honest, we're a new host. We're not, but in the 18 months that we've been running real-time, effectively honeypots, for the want of a better word, we've probably seen between 20 and 30 zero-day attacks come through our platform that at the time, no one knew what they were. Monarchs were capturing them and we were getting alerts. And some of them, I was sitting in the dashboard going, hey, we've just seen one of these come through and we're pinging Monarchs and going, yeah, we're looking at it. What do you reckon? Almost. And 10 minutes later, it's been, yeah, it's gone wild. We're blocking it down. This is happening in real time now. It's not like it's not 5 days or 10 days later. This is, okay, there's one in the wild. We got to lock this down. We got to shut it down now. And this, respectfully to those free plugins out there, is one of the sad dangers of the people who go, oh, but I've got the free plugin installed. Most of those free plugins update their security vulnerability indexes once a month. 30 days is 30 days at 20,000 new vulnerabilities a month. That's an awful lot of holes you've potentially got in your WordPress site. So, again, the importance of paid malware protection. People go, oh, okay, it's a bit expensive. And I'm going, have a look at what Patchstack is potentially worth to you when you've lost your site. When you've got to go and try and explain to your customers that their entire user list, email addresses, hopefully not credit cards, but email addresses, personal information has just all been stolen. But even more scarily, because of the nature of some of these vulnerabilities, we know, we've seen it happening, that some of them don't look like they've affected your site in any way, shape or form. They've snuck in, they're now hiding, they could be sitting there for 12 months, but during that time they can be continually copying your entire user database and handing it off to sell somewhere, capturing credit card details, capturing user information, capturing PII, capturing all that information, and you don't actually know it's there unless you're running the appropriate tools to make sure that's the case. So for the end user, as far as I'm concerned, hosts have got to step up as well. We've got to be proactive, but it's also the end user, the WordPress users installing things and plugins. They've all got to be a part of this because it's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. And that's not a scare tactic. Sadly, right now, it's just a reality of life.
Yeah. This kind of leads to my next question. How do you see the future of hosting in, let's say, 3 or 5 years? But looking at how everything speeds up right now, even those 3 years can change everything.
Look, the nature of hosting is changing. Hosting's always been a very transactional part of the WordPress space. Oh, it's something you have to do. Oh, you have to have a host. So it's been a very transactional space. And that's forced a race to the bottom. How cheap can we get? How little can we do? And respectfully, if you're on a $5 host with 10 free plugins and a free theme It's unlikely you're going to spend $100 on a paid version of WordFence or Patchstack.
But I think it becomes imperative that the hosts start to step up and say, hey, it's got to be a part of what we do, at least somewhere in the layer. And there's at least got to be something in there. But I think a part of that, certainly for what I would call a successful customer, means that hosting companies have to become or revert back to being less transactional and more partners.
And that's a hard thing because obviously there's costs and things like that. But that race to the bottom impacted two things. It impacted CPUs and hardware upgrades, but the second thing that got cut was support. So if you're only paying $5 a month, you're going to get a support line that goes, have you tried turning it on and off again? To quote the IT guys. And it's literally going to be...
Sometimes it works.
And
Sometimes
it works, except when there's malware involved, and when you try turning it on and off again, that's often when the malware triggers. So there's something suspicious going on. I've rebooted the server, and the malware's going, surprise! I'm here now. But I think, so I think hosting is going to have to change. How we do that, it's up to each individual company. Obviously, the pricing pressures and all those things are a challenge. But the evolution of AI obviously is impacting everything we do in the hosting space. I can pretty much tell you that every host in the next 5 years has to deploy an AI site builder. Yay! Because people want to build a website in 5 minutes, not 5 months. But the same garbage in, garbage out concern is there, that AI site builders statistically building code based on its scraping of the entire internet of what you've taught it through its LLM. As we've already suggested, there's plugins out there with vulnerabilities because of the exact same problem. There's no guarantee in the real world that those large language model build a website in one clicks don't have vulnerabilities either. So it's always going to be a continual game of cat and mouse. The attackers are going to get faster. They're going to get more visible. The attackers are going to get more intelligent. They're going to become more and more of them because, hey, if I can ask, one of the common things that we know about, pretty much all standard, from your Nortons on your PC or Melcare or whatever on your computer, or the standard way we do things is by signatures. And a signature is a hashed value. And if we then take that hash value and apply that to a block of code, we can come up with a match. But that hashed value is based on, in most cases, the shape of the script. It's based on what it looks like, or something specific in that script that's easily recognizable. Unfortunately, one of the superpowers of AI is, see, I can write a plugin, a one-page PHP plugin, and then hand it to Cursor or one of the other really good AI tools and say, can you clean that up for me? And it'll rewrite it.
And the shape changes.
I can go, can you stylize that in a different format? Or can you change all the function names? Or can you modify it so it does the same thing but doesn't work the same way? And there's scripting and there's AI out there now that will do that. Once you've done that to a chunk of malware, it now looks different. So its
signatures
potentially is now different. Now, if you've got a script kiddie in his basement doing that every day and then deploying one of those every day or 1,000 of them every day, our signature libraries are going to go from that to that. They're going to be buckets and buckets. And of course, if you've got to scan that many signatures, what's going to give? Hosting performance. As I said, heavy plugins like WordFence, it's a great tool for people. It's one of them else, all-in-one security. They're all good plugins, but they're all known for like performance problems because they're doing what they need to do. But they're doing it, and as the complexity gets there, as the number of signatures, as the amount of malware, as the amount of attack vectors, IP databases we used to have an IP database of known attack vectors. And then IPv6 came out and malware started hiding in IPv6 only servers where there are squintillions of potential IP addresses Again, we used to have an attack vector IP address library of 10,000 records. It can now be 10 trillion records. And again, we've got to scan it somehow, or we've got to process it somehow, or we've got to use techniques to, how do we match the data and match all those things? So the complexity is going to become worse and worse.
So when you talk about the future went into those dark and pessimistic notes, what will get better? Maybe you can think of something that...
Oh, I can think of lots of good
For sure.
things. The servers are going to get faster. The memory's going to get cheaper. The storage is going to get cheaper. And then the processors are going to get faster again. And the servers are going to get faster. And the RAM's going to get faster. So everything's going to get better. But at the same time, we've got to be aware and self-aware. Will hosting
Yeah.
change forever at some stage? Nah. People are still going to want to put their own information up somewhere on something. We currently have the grand total of 3 primary well-known web servers. We've been doing it for 20, when did Tim, 80, 90, early 90s was the first web server, I think. So what's that, 30 years? And we really only have 3 different web server types out there. Apache, Nginx, and Lightspeed. Nothing's really evolved past that. Because why? Between the 3 of them, they do the job we need. Will that change? Maybe. I'm not convinced that it will change that rapidly. And one of the reasons it will change slowly is because, see, again, we've got all these data centers with 187 million websites on them that ain't going to be updated anytime soon. Because it's too complex or too costly or too complicated, or there's no real will or design. There's still servers out there running versions of Apache from 2000. Probably.
Yeah, the famous, if it ain't broke,
Don't
don't touch it.
Unfortunately, in the malware world and in the security world, something that we didn't know was ever broken can become broken. And that's the challenge.
Mm-hmm.
There are part of the Linux stack, really well-known parts of the Linux stack, that have been there forever. And all of a sudden, not that long ago, we discovered that one of them had a massive hole in it, the OpenSSL.
Yeah.
Massive hole.
So many people looking at this.
Yeah, massive hole that you could drive a truck through once you knew what it was and how to trick the server into doing it. Even worse than that, every CPU core pretty much in existence today of recently modern generations has a massive vulnerability. It was built into the CPU cores. It's in the microcode of the CPU cores. It is a version of it for Intel. There's a version of it for AMD. They can't even fix it. All they can do is put patches there in the software to stop it being attacked anymore. And in most cases, at the expense of performance. New versions of CPU cores that are being released, they tell us won't have it. I'm sure they won't have that, but I'm sure some little script kiddie with a bunch of AI scanning data will at some stage in the future go, oh, look, Intel Xenon Series 7 has a insert name of leak here. We talk about quantum computing. That's the big buzzword at the moment. Quantum computing, they tell us that it'll be able to decode a 248-bit RSA hashed security key faster than you can type it. So we'll have to find a way around that. But thankfully at the moment, not everyone's got a quantum computer in their basement. At the moment, they're things of the future, but I can't see anyone running a quantum web server anytime soon. There's really probably not that need for their shopping list or their blog of their favorite cat videos. Time will tell.
But who knows?
Yeah, exactly.
And we already went a bit on the dark side, but let's end with, could you share your scariest hosting horror story that you...
I'd prefer not to. Most of the horror stories aren't mine, thankfully, touch wood. There are 2 that are incredibly scary. One comes out of a very well-known European hosting company who managed to build their server on the top floor and their backup data center on the bottom floor. The server caught fire and burnt down to the bottom floor and destroyed all the backups as well. That's what you call a disaster story. So it's probably a horror story. And the other is pre-Linux. It's a pre-Linux. So it's actually a Microsoft platform that got hit by a worm. One of those ransomware type things. Same thing happened. Ransomware got in, shut down before they caught it. Something like 2,500 websites were completely ransomware locked. Back in that day, backups were, even back then, backups were something that the customer was expected to do. Thankfully, these days, most of us do backups for our customers, but back then, if you wanted a backup, you had to do it yourself. And lots of those thousands of customers had no backup, had no nothing, and were actually down to rebuilding their site because no one was paying the ransomware fee to get the site back. And look, they're things that happen. But again, in 2025, best practices, obviously, things that we do at Rapyd, things that other hosting companies do, mitigate those problems. And that's about the same thing that we've been discussing this whole time. Dealing with problems before they become problems for the customer. So how do you solve the burning the building down? You put your backups in a separate building, or you put your backups in a separate country in some cases, or at least in a separate data center in a separate region. Rapyd. And then at Rapyd, for example, we multiply backup. Our customers back up their WordPress files and folders. That's great. But we also back up the entire Linux container independently. And we back up the infrastructure independently. And it's all backed up. And because we can these days, it's all cloud. We can put things and store things in many locations. So touch wood, a data center burning down would inconvenience us like it would inconvenience any host, but it wouldn't take us offline. It might take a little bit of time to recover, but it wouldn't. The same thing with ransomware and malware. Those sort of attacks, if you have appropriate attack vectors and you have appropriate backup solutions, you have appropriate storage solutions, then those things don't impact you. The same thing with security. If you address them head on, then they aren't horror stories. We know that some of our customers have been attacked. Why? Because Monarchs goes off or Patchstack goes off. We get real-time warnings. In most cases, we put Patchstack's real-time assessment team into it. They generate a certificate 15 minutes later that says fixed it, killed it, removed it, everything's clean, here's a certificate, which we send to the customer who wakes up 12 hours later and goes, oh, was that something I did? Patchstack is doing the same thing in real time. It's going, there's a problem with a malware. There's a problem with this plugin. Don't worry, we've got it covered. And again, communicating to the customer that there is a vulnerability and they should really update that plugin as soon as possible. But it's getting the positives out of those negatives. Find a solution, address a problem, and deal with it before the customer's worried about it. Because again, the bottom line is those customers aren't interested in running a data center. They're not interested in SecOps. They're not interested in OPSEC. They're not interested in any of those things. They're running a blog. They're running a shopping cart. They're running a social community. They're running an online learning course. That's their business. If they were on the high street selling shoes in a shop, they wouldn't build the shop. They'd rent it. They probably wouldn't even fit it out. They'd get a shop fitter in. They probably wouldn't probably wouldn't sleep in the shop every day to make sure that it was secure. They'd probably put an alarm system on the door and they'd probably pay a security guard to walk by and rattle the locks. They're all the things that we do in the real world. But for some reason, when we get into the WordPress hosting space or into the WordPress website space, we forget about it.
Yeah.
So if we can take those problems away, make the customer not have to worry about it, we'll rattle the doors. We'll ensure that the fire alarms and security alarms and the door locks are all there. And
We'll do our damnedest to help them keep the problems at bay. Same as Patchstack.
Without the need of sleeping in your data center.
we've got people on 24 hours a day all around the world. Operators are standing by, isn't that what they say?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Phew. I think we really touch on a lot of things. I'm really happy that you shared so many things on how Rapyd does so many things differently, because it's use the word refreshing. It's really refreshing because it's nice to see that there are hosting companies out there with this different approach, this agile approach, open to whatever is changing outside to keep up with it instead of, yeah, it's working. Let's better not touch it because
Because
it may break that.
because we're new to a certain extent, we were allowed to build a philosophy of being agile.
We haven't come out of a 10-year or 15-year journey where we've become locked into structures or locked into policies. But we've also started in a world where agile is now the buzzword.
We're agile developers, we're agile hosts, we're agile communities. So that for us, it's a good thing, I guess. It steads us in well for the future because we will always remain agile. We'll always put the customer first, and we'll always address the problems, hopefully, every time before the customer knows that that's our goal, really. There's a problem, we'll find it, we'll find a solution to it, and we'll just update the servers so that they fix the problem.
I also really like this general approach that don't describe yourself as a hosting company. You are more of a problem solver.
We're problem solver. We're a hosting partner. Yes, we are a managed. We are a, to use the technical term this week, we are a managed hosting provider for WordPress. That's our current position, to use the current term. But we take managed hosting very seriously. And by that, we're a partner. Even our support teams, we empower. If you look at our support teams, they're a little bit different to a traditional support team. Most of them have a developer background. Most of them have a SysOps or a DevOps type background or have desires to be in that space. But I could pretty much guarantee that in every one of our developers, or every one of our support team, pretty much knows how to write a WordPress plugin. And more importantly, knows how to help you fix one. And we empower our WordPress, our support teams, and our DevOps teams and our SysOps team to help customers solve their problem. We aren't in the boat of saying, oh, yes, you've got a problem, you should go talk to your developer. Sure, there are points where we still may have to say, the plugin that you've got installed is causing some serious issues, but we try to do that in such a way that we at least can go, look, this plugin that you've got here has some problems. These are the issues. These are the things that you need to talk to about with your developer. And if it's a well-known plugin, we've got back channels. 15 years in the industry, which means we know and have contacts. So we'll often go into back channels and talk with plugin developers and say, hey, you guys come across this before? And in some cases, they go, never heard of it. And we'll go, I wonder why. Because it's a real issue. And in most cases, they'll fix the problem and themselves put out a patch. In a lot of cases, they'll provide us a soft patch for our customers and we'll get the customer up and running. So we want to be proactive in all the levels. It's support, whether it's security, whether it's hosting, whether it's DevOps, SecOps, even customer success and other areas that we want to be involved in over time.
So we really touched on a lot of things, and I think it's really time to wrap it up.
Sounds good.
So, but Wes, thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge here. It's really a lot. Personally, I also learned a lot. And it was a really cool webinar from my perspective because I didn't have to do a lot of talking. I just had to be here and listen to you because you really you have a lot of knowledge and you really know how to share it. So yeah, I was just here sitting, smiling.
And look, at the end of the day, part of what we do at Rapyd is about community. We come out of the community space. We come out of this place where community is important for us. The WordPress community is important. The BuddyBoss community is important. The various plugin and SysOps communities that we're involved in are important. And for us, being in community means being a part of it. Being willing to share, being willing to talk, being willing to have conversations, and being willing to help people.
And you are doing it really well, I can tell. So with this, finally positive accent. Really, because
100%.
it's nice, because we really touched on so many negative things today. And while we are on this positive side, I think it's time to just raise our hands, wave, and say goodbye and thank you all.
Thanks a lot, mate. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Wes. Bye.